Good morning, wrestling fans. Today is Saturday, November 11th, 2023. Lance Brock here. First off, just want to say Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there, especially if there are any listening to the podcast right now. And everyone out there should wish Happy Veterans Day to the veterans and thank them for their service. As we've seen on WWE SmackDown last night, the usual video WWE shows, and then they showed at the new WWE offices the new flag. They say that it is one of the biggest flags in either the country or the whole world. And there is a new episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic from last night now available, talking all about last night's WWE Friday Night SmackDown and AEW Rampage. So if you have a chance, maybe you can go check that podcast out. And tonight we have AEW Saturday Collision, because Saturday night's all right for fighting, and this is actually doesn't happen too often since the show has been on the air, but it is a taped episode of Collision from Oakland, California, that was taped last night with the live episode of Rampage. And as usual, I always talk about this on all of the podcasts, but I do not read spoilers, so luckily, so far, I have been able to avoid them, so don't know what happened, but I do have the non-spoiler lineup here, and it definitely sounds like a pretty good card for Collision tonight. First, we have Rush and Jericho taking on the Workhorsemen. I think that one could actually be a surprise there and be pretty good. The Workhorsemen, of course, have been a lot on Dark and Dark Elevation in the past, and most recently have been competing on Ring of Honor in tag team action. And Rush and Jericho, I think these two teams could probably pull out a really good match. And we will also see tonight Daniel Garcia taking on Andrade El Idolo, which these two, just like I said about that tag match, I think these two could have a good match. Daniel Garcia is kind of still, I don't know if I would say torn, but he's not sure if he's a sports entertainer like Matt Menard would say, or if he's a pro wrestler. And put him in there with someone as talented as Andrade El Idolo. I think these two will have a pretty good match tonight on Collision. I apologize as I walk through all these leaves now. And women's action tonight. Sorry about the cough. And also the rude airplane flying up there. I know, I'm sure I'm probably the only podcaster who records episodes while walking to work, but would think planes and other things like that would know to be quiet. So we have women's action tonight on Collision, honoring the House of Black, Julia Hart, taking on Willow Nightingale. And we did see them briefly last night on Rampage, the House of Black that is, backstage, standing there eerily clapping for FTR after their victory against Commander and El Hijo del Vikingo last night. And in the main event of Rampage, tonight the main event of Collision will be a trios match where we will see the Icon Sting, Darby Allin team with the Rated R superstar Adam Copeland to take on the team of Jake the Snake Roberts' new, I guess you could call, faction, the Murder Hawk Monster Lance Archer and the Righteous Vincent and Dutch. I think this main event will be pretty good. Lance Archer, definitely talented, recently returning to AEW television, and now Jake Roberts being associated with the Righteous. And this is actually going to be the last episode of Collision before the Full Gear pay-per-view next Saturday, 1 week from tonight. Since it is on Saturday, Collision will be airing next Friday right before Rampage, so maybe that's why they did it the way they did last night with the live Rampage and taping Collision. Maybe they just wanted to test it out, see how it would do. I'm not sure. Maybe it was for another reason. I could have just missed it. But next week, a special Friday episode of Collision, the day before Full Gear. And also last night there was a show, New Japan Pro Wrestling Lone Star Shootout, which I have not been able to see just yet. And luckily I somehow was able to look at a couple things and not see the results and be spoiled just yet. So I might try to check that out and watch that show, because what I have seen of it so far, it does sound like it was a pretty good show last night that they had. And I'll try to check that out if I can. And if I do watch the show, I'm sure I'll probably talk about it at least a little bit on a future episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. So hopefully we'll be back tonight with a new episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic, talking all about AEW Saturday Collision. And next Saturday, like I talked about earlier, 1 week from tonight, is the AEW Full Gear pay-per-view. And it's a pay-per-view night. So that means gonna be trying for a special live episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. But if you're familiar with AEW pay-per-views, you do know that they tend to go quite a while, sometimes pretty late in the night. And also sometimes you have to wait a little while for Tony Khan's media scrum post-conference to start. And then those actually sometimes last quite a while too. So not sure what time that episode is going to start though. Like I always say, especially with the AEW pay-per-views. And you have to wonder now that they are expanding the pay-per-view schedule, going to 12 a month, if maybe each one won't be quite as long. And like I've said before, Dave have announced that Ring of Honor's Final Battle coming up next month, instead of being an actual pay-per-view, will be available to Honor Club subscribers. And that is all for this episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. Thank you everyone for stopping by and listening on this Saturday morning. Hope you all have a great day. And remember, hopefully, there will be a new episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatics tonight, talking about Collision. So I will be back tomorrow morning, though, for the Sunday episode of Good Morning Wrestling Fans. And until tomorrow morning, I am Lance, wrong podcast. Have a great pro wrestling day.